Okay, so hello everyone. I am Kiana Marie, and if this is your first time meeting me or hearing me, I am a creative artist and spiritual practitioner. I am a certified Kundalini yoga teacher with 300 hours practicum, courtesy of my time with Yoga Vision. And today or tonight, depending on where you are, I wanted to, I am going to uh, walk you through the journey of me exploring spirituality in entertainment media. So, I'm going to be covering how the spiritual concepts of my favorite shows influenced and guided my spiritual journey. And I'm going to be touching on creative expression and spiritual awareness and the intersection between these. And right off the bat, just wanted to say honorable mention straight up is Yu Hakusho. This is Yusuke Urameshi during the dark tournament of that show, Yu Hakusho. Um, really big influence. So this presentation was actually part of the curriculum for my Kundalini yoga training. I originally did this in April of 2025, and I felt that perhaps a way that I can be heard in this world is to just do it and to talk about my own journey and see if it resonates with anyone else and see if it helps anyone else. So, moving forward, I have a roadmap that we're going to go through, and I'll start with who I am at the root, and then we're going to move through what I've experienced regarding my creative outlets and spiritual expression, and then we're going to talk about when my awakening occurred, and then where my healing journey took me uh, post awakening, and why I chose to talk about these forms of media in particular, and overall how my journey continues today. So, right off the bat, this chubby cheeked munchkin is me. I am a Gemini born smack dab in the middle of June, and I am a 90s baby. So, I am a black transgender woman. My pronouns are she, they. I am a creative artist with experience in music production, photography, visual arts and cinema, and literature. So, about my music introduction, I attended Pittsburgh Creative and Performing Arts, also known as Pittsburgh Kappa, and that's where I became classically trained on the piano. So, at a younger age, I started playing by ear, just picking up on the soap operas my grandma would watch and started playing those things back. And it evolved into me listening to uh, pieces like Furelise and Moonlight Sonata, and I eventually went on to take lessons at my local. Uh, I don't really remember the uh, formal word for it, but I went to take lessons and performed in recitals in my early childhood, and that led to me eventually auditioning to uh, enter Pittsburgh Creative and Performing Arts, and that's where I honed my skills and learned quite a lot. So I graduated, fast forward some time, I graduated from Full Sail University with a Bachelor's of Science in Digital Cinematography in 2021. My college journey was not linear. I initially went to Point Park in 2011 and 12. I didn't really resonate with that experience at all. In fact, my first school I wanted to go to was Full Sail University, and eventually, one thing led to another, and I stuck up for myself and went to school on my own terms outside of anyone else's expectations for me. So, um, my work creatively is inspired by various spiritual subjects and my perspectives of the nature of reality. So, from my drawings to my narratives to the short stories I make to poems to even the reasons behind the still photography images that I took throughout my life, all based off of my perception of reality and how I could best describe what I literally experience um, day to day through pattern recognition, how I see and experience colors and sounds and everything. And my overall spiritual curiosity began in my early childhood, and it proved to be something I couldn't disregard without feeling empty or ignoring it. And I'll delve into more about that coming up. So, what I've experienced. So, in my early moments of awareness, my spiritual curiosity began around my kindergarten years. I questioned the existence of God, spirits, the afterlife, the point of prayer, and the meanings of reality. So, I was raised in a heavily Christian family, Southern Baptist. Um, it, I was just someone that questioned those things. I wasn't necessarily always encouraged to question, but they were still parts of how I had expressed my curiosity. Um, but with that, I also had an affinity for science. So science was like my logical way of understanding the world as it was taught, and my spiritual uh, experiences and my questions were more about the abstract things, the things that weren't so binary. So that evolved into a bit of repression, actually. Again, there were certain topics that weren't necessarily questioned or met with or approached with a lot of critique in my religious upbringing. It's not something that is easily talked about in family, but it is my experience. Um, so, after experiencing challenges with openly communicating my curiosities, I channeled my repressed emotions through creative art, through stories, shows, and movies that covered spiritual topics. And we're going to zigzag over to imagination here. So I also experienced instances of psychic and clairvoyant connections, such as vivid dreams, deja reverie, uh, moments where it's like it's not quite deja vu. It's like, holy crap, this happened in internally, and now it's happening externally. It's not happening again. It's not like this loop or some break in my consciousness where there's this clear defined loop. It's almost like precognition. Um, but they were inconsistent, but they were like it was generally accurate enough for me to feel some type of way. If you know, you know. Um, so I've also had instances of faintly recognizing energetic fields around living organisms, uh, in some traditions, and commonly referred to as auras. You'll hear me sort of talk in this nuanced way about spirituality because, again, there was a point where I heavily relied on science and logic. Uh, sort of honestly, straight up, it was like me abandoning myself and sort of settling for just straight up logic and science to explain these things. And if I couldn't explain them, I would shut them out. So I also am on the autism spectrum. Uh, I experience sensations intensely, and in order to function, I would have to shut these things off and literally shut them out. Um, but around the age of 13, uh, this all came to a head, and I needed to find some outlet to discover myself, discover things that weren't being taught in schools or in like my family dynamic, extended or immediate. So around the age of 13, I came across information about Kundalini energy online and energy information regarding the chakras. So at this age, I took an interest in an anime titled Yu Hakusho. I was really big in anime. Um, and over time, my imagination combined with practicing movement of energy, it left an impression on me. These things that I would see in Yu Yu Hakusho, it sort of talked to me. I mean, I was a fan of Dragon Ball Z too, but Yu Yu Hakusho had a certain level of groundedness in the spiritual elements of this world that we live in, and it really helped me through a confusing time. So when my awakening began, it wasn't one spontaneous instance, but rather the accumulation of a series of events. So from the age of 13, this was like early, like mid 2000s, to this time I'm mentioning now, 2017, it was on and off me delving into spirituality. Some things scared me, some things I was scared from talking about, scared into not talking about. Um, but overall, I started, because of these complications and these nuances and not enough information or avenues for me to go down, I started losing faith and interest in both spiritual subjects and my passions. Um, there were a lot of other things going around at this time that we'll get into, but my goals felt harder to achieve. close relatives were declining in health, and my job working for a health insurance call center like ate away at me. I really woke up, and it shocked me awake, and it was a lot for me. Um, so, for all intents and purposes, all of this began the process of my radicalization as much as it drained me. So, it was like this constant swirl, this whirlpool of just turmoil inside. So, in retrospect, I see this as an intersection where my cynicism in the spiritual phenomena that I had experienced and that I had taken interest in had began to develop. And now, a trigger warning that I will mention is that I will get into alcohol, death, and depression. So, if these are tough subjects for you, I just wanted to point that out. So, this is a timeline of when my awakening began. In 2017, my grandfather passed away. He was a major influence on my life. He was the person that got me into entrepreneurship, wanting to develop my own branding, my own agency, my own sense of legacy. He was someone that didn't push his uh, agenda or his thoughts on me a lot. He was one of the forces in my family that actually asked me what I wanted to do and helped me rather than insisted, And when he passed, I thought I would have reached a certain level of success before he passed because I was reaching it. I was making beats. I was making music, making money selling my music. I was becoming a well-known indie artist in my circles at the time. But when he passed, it sort of hit me like a truck. And during my grieving process, I experienced a desire, for the meaning of life and the point of suffering. But I also became even more cynical of the spiritual concepts that I initially felt a connection to. So this poured into 2018, where I began to realize that who it wasn't satisfying or beneficial. I was masking between work and home, and alcohol was an unexpected comfort. I didn't drink like the way I like to think of it is I I did not spend a whole lot of money on alcohol, but my thing is if it was present, it was a comfort. It was one of those things, but it was still bad enough that it had become a bit of a habit. And I felt ashamed about it. And I seen it as cliche because my biological father also experienced alcoholism. And I experienced that in moments under his supervision. It wasn't all the time, but the times that it was very intense. So these things started coming back up. And by 2019, I had already come out toward the end of 2018, but a year into that, uh, a year later, I'm sorry, a year later, 2019, I came out as transgender and I began my hormonal transition. So I came out as gender fluid in 2018. It was like a soft way of coming out to make sure that I was safe. I didn't have my own housing, and I just wanted to make sure I was safe, regardless of what anyone thinks in my family. Now, what I was dealing with then was a whole different beast. So, me coming out was a large step. Me transitioning was a large step. These were like the first moments I really did something for me next to going back to school in 2017. Um, so I still felt incomplete and desired to learn more about myself. I started journaling more. It was like a dialogue with myself that began, and I started noticing the version of me that was having thoughts and the version of me that was noticing having these thoughts. Um, and it sort of helped my brain out. So in 2020, lockdown happened, COVID happened, and I started regressing, uh, retreated from journaling a bit more. So within months of transitioning, the pandemic struck. My it I balanced being an essential worker as my body's changes demanded more than I expected. I was working my health center job at the time as well as working at a home improvement store. So I was getting my ass kicked by the hours and all while crawling through college. And the workload led to a dependency on sleep medicine, and that led to a very close death. Like I had my first near death experience, but I didn't process it until the whole next year. But uh, shortly into 2020, I did end up leaving this healthcare job. So I just had one job while I was focusing on school. And then in 2021, I graduated. And while I was working Instacart, like this was when I started beginning working a second job. Like I was doing the home improvement job while doing delivery, and I got into a car accident. So literally a week after graduating, I got into a car accident. And while regaining my composure during this time, uh, flashbacks of my like traumatic things that I had repressed throughout my childhood came back, and I began studying spiritual subjects again and reconnecting with my past through anime and shows that I had in my queue, Netflix, Hulu, and just I had been putting them off. And two shows in particular were Avatar: The Last Airbender and Adventure Time. And these shows brought so much comfort and knowledge and wisdom. It was insane for me. So, and we'll get into the shows. We're definitely getting there. Um, where my awakening ended up taking me, though. In 2022, I had my Kundalini awakening. It was a very intense experience. I remember energy shooting up my spine, but I mostly felt it in my brain. It felt like all these different parts of my brain had been reconnecting. I fell over in the fetal position, um, literally in pain and like physical pain and emotional pain. And this experience ended up uh, leading toward a crisis post therapy. Like I had just got out of therapy, actually. Like, um, what kind of, it was just like emotional therapy, talking about my problems. And I had a moment, there was this, like, my therapist had left, and then this crisis happened, and I ended up in an intensive outpatient program. Uh, that year, I also started doing things that I felt called to. I was volunteering with various queer outlets throughout Pittsburgh, community outreach. I was doing what I could to try to get connected with the trans people in the LGBTQ plus community around my area, uh, rather than just on social media. And I actually spent my first Thanksgiving away from home. And it was a really nice experience. Normally I have it at home, but I just didn't want to. November's had become very rough for me at this point. Um, and it was a very nice experience. And into 2023, I furthered my yoga practice, started reconnecting with my ancestral history, um, both on the African side and the Irish side. And I had another painful event that led to me entering an adult diversion and stabilization program. It was like, honestly, it was like a step short of being 302'd, which were experiences that were actually a bit harmful, but I did find the best in these situations. Uh, but I'm not going to gloss over that. They were definitely harmful experiences that could have been dealt with another way. So in 2024, though, that's when I began to teach what I've learned over these years to people I knew, different forms of breath work, mantras, mudras. I had not officially began practicing Kundalini just yet at this point. Um, I was giving people insight. I was helping my grandmother who had pulmonary fibrosis and COPD. I was helping her with breathing exercises, and I started posting videos on Instagram, and that led to an opportunity to undergo Kundalini yoga teacher training through Yoga Vision Online. And that was actually the channel that I had been learning from. I had been learning a lot of my Kundalini practices from that, as well as from that channel, from that business, as well as from what books I could find. And it was a very profound experience. And that leads into the shows that I'm talking about specifically, because these shows carried me through these years of my spiritual awakening. And three that I want to talk about specifically are Yu Hakusho, Avatar: The Last Airbender, and Adventure Time. So here I have the dates listed of the runtime of those shows, but I had watched Yu Yu Hakusho throughout my life, and Avatar and Adventure Time were the ones that were new to me in these years between 2022, 2023, and 2024. So let's start with Yu Yu Hakusho. If you're not familiar with it, in a nutshell, Yu Yu Hakusho, also known as Ghost Files, Poltergeist Report, is a Japanese manga and anime series that is centered around Yusuke Urameshi, who is introduced as a knuckle-headed schoolboy and follows his journey of becoming a powerful spiritual being following his spontaneous and unexpected self-sacrifice in efforts to save a child in danger. So, upon being resurrected, he becomes a spirit detective, a ghost hunter, if you will, um, tasked with stopping demons and malevolent forces that constantly attack the human realm. Along his journey, he gains multiple spiritual abilities and rises in power and as he overcomes the challenges he faces from formidable demons to his own limitations. The series concerns itself with the subject matter of supernatural powers, mythological beings, and depictions of the afterlife that are inspired by our own reality's diverse belief systems in actual Japanese culture. Uh, so this series' depiction of energy manipulation in the aura, uh, specifically like spirit energy and such, it's still among my top favorite experiences for how they did it, and it resonated with how I actually experienced it in my real lived sensory experience. So the depictions of energy systems in Yu Yu Hakusho come in various forms. The primary forms are spirit energy and demon energy. Now they have some similar visual aesthetics, but they do have some nuanced characteristics. So spirit energy is possessed by humans. Everyone has a unique spirit energy signature. It's often linked to an emotional state. It rises or is influenced by rage, serenity, love, conviction, those types of things. And while it's primarily depicted as blue for our main antagonist, Yusuke Urameshi, it has also been displayed in other colors depending on the character and their type of energy. It's it's a way of depicting the differences in these characters, but it's also a commentary of how these things aren't so binary, even in the spirit realm. So, spirit energy is often depicted as requiring intense discipline to achieve supernatural abilities. Everyone has spirit energy, but these characters in the show, they have an intense concentration and they further their training. Uh, they further their energy levels and their capacities through training and discipline. Now, demonic energy, on the other half, is harnessed primarily by demons, sometimes humans uh, as well, if they have tapped in or have communed with demons to some extent. Um, but another thing is that it's not always as strong as spirit energy, but it is more pleasurable and potent. It takes a certain type of mindset and conviction to tap into these energies. Think of it like shadow work in our spirit, our lived experience. Demons, being of a supernatural nature, they tend to have greater amounts naturally. So full demons and half demons have more than a human who uh, does something to gain demon powers, for example. Um, it can also be linked to an emotional state. The character that you see here with a third eye, which is the Jagan eye, is Hiei. He is someone who taps into his energy through focus and rage, and he's a beast. He's like my, uh, he's a favorite representation of shadow work for this series. If you haven't watched it, I highly recommend, even if you're not into anime. So, like spirit energy, demon energy can be used to heal oneself. However, it is frowned upon in demon culture as demons prefer energy for confrontation. Again, shadow work. This resonated with me. I was typically raised through certain family dynamics and my peers throughout life to just push away emotions that were seen as too fragile or vulnerable. Um, and we'll talk about how that plays into my overall experience later. But more nuanced energies of spiritual beings also exist. One is also known as sacred energy. It's a very rare form of spiritual energy. It's attained but isn't guaranteed through intense discipline and training. It might take one a lifetime to reach this level. But in this rare depiction, it is stated as being demanding of the practitioner operating beyond the physical planes of existence. So this show really tapped into the very dimensional layers that overlap our reality. And that blew my mind at a young age because it's like it was talking to me, not just from an action standpoint, but from an experiential standpoint. So, again, with sacred energy and the discipline required, it's said to take 40 years to master. However, the character who debuts this energy that you see on screen, his name is Shinobu Sensui. He debuts this energy. He did so in 6 years due to his 7 split personalities dividing the work. So there's a role of consciousness and awareness at play here too. And there are other unique energy forms. We don't really see them often, but toward the end of the series, Yusuke and other characters display unique forms of energy, unique strictly to them and how they use it, that combines multiple types of energies that give, for example, Yusuke in this depiction, his own signature style. He's not tapping into sacred energy, but rather a completely different threshold and bracket of energy unique to himself. It is a combination of his trained and inherited abilities as well as his heritage. I don't want to spoil the show for anyone who hasn't seen it. So, about aura and energy manipulation in this show. You can see right now how it's all wavy, like bioelectric energy. That's how it felt to me. It felt more like a wave amid, like a dense wave around me amid a wave of energy that surrounded everything. So the energy system in Yu Yu Hakusho is often depicted as an auric field around the spiritual possessor's physical body. While not always visible to the naked eye, it is explained in the show's narrative to always be in and around the body of living beings. From that foundation, the physical being is given information or direct training in moving and utilizing their spirit energy. Applications include offensive techniques like Yusuke's spirit gun, defensive strategies, regenerative actions, and various forms of matter and reality manipulation itself. Some characters are so powerful that the sheer process of them using their full awareness or simply powering up can shake and disrupt their environment and disrupt dimensions that transcend their physical realm. So the insight that I gained from Yu Yu Hakusho, aura and awareness, seeing how characters train their bodies and minds to focus while enduring physical sensations helped me develop a foundation of self-discipline, especially when I initially felt these surges of energy through my body. They did not feel like Charlie horses or muscle spasms. They felt like electricity or energy or fluid flowing where it wasn't flowing before on its own. And sometimes it seemed to pay attention to my own awareness and intention. So I learned how to reel in my sensory and energetic awarenesses regarding my immediate surroundings without completely shutting them off, and visualize my energy and awareness expanding beyond my physical location with intention and practice. While the show overall influenced me to care about my physical fitness, I gravitated more toward characters who weren't quintessentially bulky, things that you see in things like Dragon Ball Z, which are absolutely dope, but it just wasn't my way of wanting to train myself. My interest mainly focused on the colorful and dynamic energy elements and the actual the sensory experiences of this energy. The way Yu Yu Hakusho depicts spiritual energy in both idle and active scenarios aided my visualization process when imagining my own experience and sensations. The animation and fluidity of energy aided me in seeing metaphysical energies around me without sole focus on my physical eyes. I started perceiving heat and cold differently, as well as experienced sensitivity to radio waves. Um, I used the sensation of my body radiating heat from like the actual feeling of my body radiating heat as an anchor to scanning my body and learning to visualize expansion and contraction of my energy. To this day, I picture energy as all part of one ethereal ocean, like I mentioned earlier, sort of like a unified field, with each material object having its own unique energy signature, whether it's an inanimate object, a tree, a animal, or a person. So it has its own energy signature and density that can stand out amid the greater field that is around everything else. It's sort of like the one thing that's separating all matter, into its own form. So the lower chakra experiences that I had from, Yu Hakusho and my own spiritual journey, in retrospect, this series catered to my strength, creativity, and willpower in huge ways. I began channeling my creativity more through like writing my own stories and making music to accompany my mental images. This is all in addition to, you know, coming up with my own gestures. It felt goofy at first, but coming up with my own gestures, which I didn't really know were mudras at the time when I was younger watching this show. But in contrast, many parts of the show's darker elements, combined with my state of being around the time I had been enjoying it in my youth, also contributed to some negative patterns in processing of experiences, such as believing healing through time and patience was weak, like I mentioned with demon energy earlier. Um, However, my affinity for all of the elements of the show kept me out of trouble, as I considered my own identity in line with my favorite characters, like what would Yusuke Urameshi or Kuwabara do? How would they handle situations and feelings? And it was sort of like an anchor for me. Next show. So, Avatar The Last Airbender. The Avatar universe, so cool. So, the Avatar universe takes place primarily amid the physical Earth realm across four nations: the Air Nomads, the Earth Kingdom, the Water Tribe, and the Fire Nation. Each nation has a connection to their corresponding element, both culturally and energetically. Those who are able to manipulate the elements are known as benders. The last airbender, in particular, who you see on the screen now, centers around Aang, the last known surviving air nomad at the time of this story. I'm sorry, I sometimes pronounce it Aang. It's also pronounced Aang in the show. My apologies. Um, so he was the last known surviving air nomad at the time of this story, capable of bending the element of air at will. He is the incarnation of the Avatar. The Avatar is the human embodiment of light and peace. As with all Avatar incarnations before him, Aang is capable of controlling all four bending arts, which he hones and uses in his journey of ending the 100-Year War that was initiated by the Fire Nation, who waged the war with three other nations of Earth. It's also a very good commentary on things that we're going through now regarding fascism and all kinds of things. I do not shy away from that conversation. Um, so the last Airbender's explanations were spot on for like what I was going through. Because mind you, my first impression of the last Airbender came during my spiritual awakening. So it was already in line because there's an episode in the show called The Guru. It's from book 2, essentially season 2, episode 19, where Guru Patik, being with great knowledge and connection to the spirit world, teaches Aang about the chakras, detailing the characteristics of each energy point with such accurate detail for an animated show. It was amazing. I was tearing up. I felt compelled. But in the show, Guru Patik highlights the blockages that prevent the energy from flowing through a being's body. In my opinion, the show does a great job at introducing the audience to the chakra system in a way that's digestible and faithful to the real life knowledge and practice. While it doesn't explicitly mention Kundalini, the chakras are tied to Kundalini energy, and it was it was a very good. It helped me feel not so alone in the creative arts while I was exploring my spiritual awakening at this time. I didn't have many people to talk to about this stuff. Um, so yeah, the elements, as mentioned in the gist of The Last Airbender, in addition to the four elements each correlating with their respective nation, nations, the bending arts of each element also corresponds with a unique martial arts style, which is how the elements are channeled in use. There are more nuanced avenues of the elements also that become known as the series progresses. Example, skilled earthbenders can learn how to bend metals. Pure energy bending is also possible with practice. That's like a whole different level from the four main ones. Those who water bend, they can end up bending mud because there's water mixed with the earth. They can even bend blood, which is a very prolific concept in the show, and how they depict it really touches on consent and energy and intention. So I really recommend it if you have not watched it. So the last Airbenders, uh, I have it titled the Chakra Experience because again, it really touched home for me there. So it helped me understand the chakras. The show helped me reconnect with the knowledge of the seven chakra system uh, before being introduced to the concept of the aura being the eighth chakra in Kundalini Yoga. Um, but it helped me reconnect with the seven chakra system as well as insight on how to search my feelings to address wounds and emotions tied to them. Doing so was not easy. It is not a walk in the park. Healing and stuff is not pretty. Uh, and around the time of watching this show, my spiritual awakening was at a point where my pains were pretty deep and my emotional regulation capabilities were not so stable. Again, this was late 2021, early 2022, when I had been going through intensive outpatient programs and, well, just one program, but then later in 2023 with the adult diversion and stabilization. This was sort of like another anchor for my adult self. Um, and in contrast to the Yu Hakusho uh, and its lower chakra integration, uh, the last Airbender provided me upper chakra integration. Uh, so Yu Hakusho helped me identify and integrate lower chakra experiences. Avatar helped me tap into my intuition, speak up for myself, and to hear my inner critic, and help me be more receptive to the spiritual experiences I was having, from synchronicities and significant meanings of dreams to more awareness of my present moment, the thoughts and what all these things are trying to teach and or tell me. I developed wider perspectives of my own body and emotions, and it was something that at a point, being in my body and emotions, I was still thinking was inefficient and pointless at this time. But I did end up making it through. Uh, so, in retrospect, though, as I began to practice Kundalini Yoga again, I took time to observe and assess the long running patterns and wounds of my past. I started to see how I weaponized my own emotions against myself and others, and I noticed how my initial enthusiasm and curiosity about spiritual subjects and experiences gradually drifted away over the course of my life. So today, quite literally today, my interest is still present to varying extents. It's not always pretty, but the journey's not always linear. Which brings me to Adventure Time. Adventure Time primarily follows Jake the dog and Finn the human, who embark on various adventures and tasks together across the land of U, a planet which is a reflection of our own Earth. So this series contains a plethora of esoteric and mythological references out the wazoo, from locations, magical practices, the planes of the afterlife, traversing the etheric and astral realms, as well as characters and what they embody, literal archetypes. Some characters are full-on embodiments of spiritual archetypes, tarot cards, and even characters that represent the physical manifestations of life, death, chaos, and nothingness. As the series unfolds, the lore expands, and we learn the history of U. We learn how magical beings came to roam in abundance, and the nature of magic and its place in the cosmic fabric of reality. Even the smallest and seemingly most random references in the show have major implications to the overall the plot at some point. Like something that happens small in season 1 will have so much more meaning to you by season 3, have more meaning to you by season 6, It's really that good. So um, the cyclical passage of time, the cyclical passage of time in Adventure Time is important because the show frequently deals with rebirths, reincarnations, and the poetic nature of karmic cycles. So, two examples are one in season 5, episode 34, The Vault. Just now, I'm going to just say spoiler warning. I'm going to just touch on some things without delving too much into the episodes. So, The Vault is the episode of Adventure Time that concerns itself with the concepts of past life regression directly. Like they talk about this. It's not even implied, it's just straight out. They talk about reincarnation and the cyclical process of karma. In the episode, we follow a past character with striking similarities to one of the main recurring characters. As the story unfolds, this character is discovered to be very crucial in a present character's efforts to address distressing dreams and emotions that have been building up over the course of the series thus far. The outcome results in clarity and strengthened bonds between present characters, a massive karmic completion, and a primary character's new sense of relief and self actualization. The episode literally ends with one of the main characters being quite literally wiser and taking it in stride. So another episode is from the Adventure Time. It's a spin-off of the main series, and this episode is called Together Again. In this episode, recurring characters reunite, weaving in and out each other's brief experiences as the 5 stages of grief gradually bring the reality of the matter to the forefront of one of the main characters' awareness. As one of the characters struggles to reunite with their companion, he exerts resistance to the literal nature of death itself. In contrast, the companion of this main character had already accepted death and surrendered to such a degree that they had reached a level known as the 50th and highest level of the show's afterlife, seemingly attaining a state of nirvana. So, an analysis of Timeless Adventure for me, this helped me heal my inner child in a huge way and reconnect with my crown chakra. So, healing my inner child, the combination of what set Adventure Time apart from the other shows of my own era's childhood, is that it tapped into me in a way that made the process of confronting and actually being the mother to my inner child bearable, while further stimulating my own creativity. The simplistic yet creative art style, perfectly chosen and well timed sound effects, the various plot lines and subplots, and the vault of musical numbers really struck home. Themes and motifs, they all came together in a way that was conducive to my enjoyment while encouraging me to remain curious of reality, self growth, and possibilities. There was a lot of crying that I had done during and by the end of this show. So I do recommend it, even if you're not into cartoons. So, on the other half of this analysis is reconnecting with my crown. By the time I finished the series, I felt a strong alignment with all of my chakras, namely my crown. I felt a deeper understanding of how all things in reality and history contribute to each other in one way or another. I saw the entirety of conflict and resolution from different perspectives, sort of looking at things from a bigger picture. And I related to more than just one of the characters and even learned to acknowledge their flaws. For a show made with children in mind, this story manages to take complex subjects and stories and makes them digestible for brains of all ages. The coming of age elements helped bridge the gap between my childhood experiences and my approach to the complexities of adulthood in a way that I hadn't really experienced growing up. Honestly, like half the time I would go through something, the ending result or answer or lesson was that's just how it is. It is what it is. You push it away and keep moving forward. Not healthy. So, how my journey continues today. My overall perspective of reality has seriously changed from something that was fairly stagnant and linear and binary to something that was multifaceted, nonlinear, and infinitely transient, which is more in line with what it was sort of butting into when I was younger. You know, doesn't I didn't grow linearly. So mentioning these instances of media is not only a sliver of what I could talk about, but it's a peek into my life and a vulnerable side of me. I haven't delved into the significance of my gender transition and why it is intrinsically intertwined with my spiritual experience, but I will do that in future dossiers and debriefings of myself. But however, the work I've done analyzing my wounds and core identity and values and overall experiences have helped me step into a lane of my own. And this all played a core role in me speaking up for myself on a familial level, a social level, a societal level, letting me take up space and taking up space where I know I want to. So the phenomena I've experienced over the past few years aren't always easy for me to articulate. Sometimes there are people who just will not get it; they don't believe it, and this is sort of my call to action, reaching out to people who want to resonate and have discussions like this. So it's shown me that there's more to reality than I've experienced, and I desire to experience far more. I won't go back to my old way of life. I will go into a new life before going back. So, amid all that I've experienced, these shows have given me hope, if not insight, on how to navigate my life and emotions. So, when I feel a particular resonating factor from these types of shows, it gives me a tether, a connection, even if it's just a temporary moment or a temporary instance that I assign it to. There's still a timeless layer to it that helps me address a major theme of my life or something in my life at that point. So, how my journey continues today continued. Um, these shows have also influenced my own creative expression. I'm still working on my own creative works, one of which entails two unique universes. I'm world building. It's a universe that depicts a parallel of my own experience in this shared reality, albeit depicting the actual introduction and revelation of mythological figures and occasions. And I'm working on another universe that existed before our own and details the chaotic events that led to the birth of our reality. Um, and again, I combine science and spirituality and my love for magic, magic with a K, um, into these creative works. And I also make music that has intentional use of key signatures and familiar sounds and waves that reach across decades that feel as if I've lived them in past lives. Like I said, I'm a 90s baby, but I'm really big on 80s music, 80s synthesizers, 80s drum kits, 80s patterns, 80s vocals, harmonics, effects. Um, I incorporate these into my work more than just an aesthetic. So, if that is something that you are listening to right now and that resonates with you, hello, there is stuff on my channel for you to check out. Um, but, however, there are more elements of my experience that have been ongoing beyond just entertainment media. I'm currently working on some things to help me feel a sense of completion and purpose that feels like a good balance of progression as well as a means to an end for one reason or another. So I'm currently integrating all the information and practices I've learned from into a grimoire of magical practices and divine theories, and they will include healing through Kundalini yoga, since that is I primarily use Kundalini yoga as a healing modality as I explore other esoteric practices and beliefs and systems, and also my exploration of spiritual concepts that generally resonate with me. Um, in ways I feel it is the best way I can contribute some idea of a collective, contribute to some idea of a collective to help others along their way. So the reason I say that, in short, I'm very big on people finding their own spiritual or religious path. I have religious trauma and I have religious apprehensions of talking to people about things. I'm not trying to convince anyone to believe in anything. I don't want to be convinced to believe in anything. So just know that when I talk about spiritual things on this channel, I do not want you to follow what I believe. I just want you to observe and consider. So just want to keep that in mind. I'm very big on those boundaries. So, an open minded conclusion. Over the past few years, I've acquired tools to work toward the goals that I have along the way, and I've utilized them to aid others in healing, and I've helped them expand their perspectives of reality. I see myself traveling the world, observing and collecting artifacts of spiritual significance, and raising my consciousness to new realities and frequencies to have the experiences and phenomena I seek. Um, that sounds vague, but I truly do believe in like genuine esoteric magic and spiritual practices and beliefs. I'm willing to literally leave home and travel the world for my whole life to find what I seek. I don't know how, but I will. I still have wounds that I'm healing. I desire an experience unlike anything I've heard other spiritual figures talk about, and having it happen beyond just my imagination or hearsay. I want this healing to have a purpose that feels worth continuing. I don't want to just manifest a soulmate or a twin flame. There's nothing wrong with that, but I want more from my spiritual manifestations. I learned I've learned that like I'm my own person. I want more than just manifesting material things. That doesn't mean I want them or I'm averse to them, but that means that they are not my end goal. I have those and I will receive more. I want more than just fighting cyclical battles generation after generation. Whatever I contribute from my perspective, I'm confident that it will be enough and it will eventually help someone else, even if it's to acknowledge that they're not alone in once having an intense passion and curiosity that changes and seems less certain later in their lives, only for it to return greater in unexpected ways. Perhaps someone will be inspired to self reflect on their accumulated life experiences and will find connections to help them stabilize and move forward, or perhaps it will motivate them to demand more reality, to demand more of reality for themselves one way or another. That's not to say reality isn't enough. If it's enough for you, that's great. But if you want more, that's also great. So if this helps you speak up a little bit more, even for yourself, I consider that an accomplishment. And bless you. So, a couple honorable mentions. I wanted to list a couple more anime and cartoons and movies that specifically spoke to my spiritual awakening, my perception of reality, and I really recommend everything on this screen. Even if you don't like anime, even if you don't like certain science fiction things, even if you don't like certain genres of music. Um, so I'm going to say them. Angel Beats, amazing anime focused on the afterlife. Steven Universe, amazing cartoon. Clannad, amazing anime. Little Busters, amazing anime. Some of these are slow burns. Clannad and Little Buster are fairly slow burns, but they're worth it. Empire Strike Back. Empire Strikes Back. That Star Wars movie, next to Revenge of the Sith, this one awakened me. This one is the one that taught me about the Force. Inuyasha covered more about yokai and oni and so many different creatures and demons and deities from Japanese mythology. Very good manga, very good anime. Um, I love it. So there's also Dragon Ball Z. Come on, we can't leave that out after all the name drops we did. San Junipero, that helped me process a near-death experience. Uh, Feelings like I was in a coma. I really went through a lot more than I say, and I have every right to speak my truth, regardless of um, where I'm at in life. Like it could be worse, but I'm not gonna die without speaking my truth because someone thinks that I should not. Um, so you'll hear me talk more about my life. Don't worry. So music, Blue Oyster Cult, specifically Fire of an Unknown Origin, that whole album, it, oh my goodness. I feel like I'm gonna have to do reviews of this stuff one day. Earth, Wind, and Fire, Serpentine Fire is a great song. It taps into the very nature and essence of Kundalini. If the visuals aren't enough for you, If the name isn't enough for you, that song will awaken something in you, especially their use of instruments. Um, Don't Fear the Reaper. Help me get through the 5 stages of grief. Enya's music, it taps into the Celtic part of me. Um, oh, Enya, if you ever watch this one day, I do hope to one day meet you. I don't know if it's a long shot or whatever, but you have had a significant impact on my life. And so has Roger Troutman. I have Roger Troutman here because music, I cry to it, dance to it, ritualize to it. Roger Troutman got me to move my body to get me out of being stagnant. May he rest in peace. He is a great legend. I recommend The Many Facets of Roger as your first album. So here's my references and sources as well. I know no one necessarily asked, but if you wanted them, here they are. There's YouTube video links. I will also put them in the description as well. So that's actually the end of this. Thank you for being here with me. This is one of the first times I'm really speaking up and out about myself, and it was very important to me to take time to do this. So if nothing else, hopefully this gave you something to kill time with. But I do hope it resonates with you on some level. If it does, feel free to talk in the comments. I will talk to you as much as I can. Um, just talk. You're not alone. You never really were. So if you are on your spiritual journey, I also have something I want to share with you in the coming days, weeks, maybe. Just something small, something easily digestible. But I really do thank you for sticking around for this. I don't normally speak because, sometimes it's just dysphoric, but we'll save that for other videos. But thank you for being with me, Kiana Marie. Yes, that's me. I'm signing out. Have a good night.